the 45-minute error that nearly destroyed a Wall Street giant. On August 1, 2012, a routine software deployment placed one of America's largest trading firms in immediate danger. Knight's system was supposed to process 212 small retail orders. Instead, it generated more than 4 million executions involving over 397 million shares. The activity reached 154 stocks in approximately 45 minutes. Knight unintentionally acquired approximately $3.5 billion in long positions and $3.15 billion in short positions. The unwanted portfolio ultimately cost the firm more than $460 million. The failure was caused neither by a cyber attack nor by a disastrous market prediction. It began with dormant code, one incomplete installation, and safeguards that could observe mounting risk without automatically stopping it. The result exposed how quickly a technical mistake can become a corporate catastrophe when money moves at machine speed. Chapter 1. The firm behind the orders. Knight Capital was not a small experimental firm operating at the margins of the financial system. Throughout 2011 and 2012, Knight's aggregate trading generally represented approximately 10% of all listed United States equity volume. Many investors could pass through Knight's infrastructure without ever knowing the company's name. One of Knight's primary systems was a high-speed automated order router called SMARS. SMARS received larger parent orders and created smaller child orders that it sent to outside trading venues. It searched across a fragmented market for available liquidity and attempted to complete each customer instruction efficiently. SMARS alone generally represented 1% or more of all trading in listed United States equities. In the summer of 2012, Knight modified the router for a new New York Stock Exchange initiative called the Retail Liquidity Program. The program required new code that would change how eligible retail orders were handled when the market opened. The update had to be installed correctly across 8 separate SMARS servers. Chapter 2. The 8th server. The part of the system being replaced still contained an unused function called PowerPeg. Knight had stopped using PowerPeg in 2003, but the executable code remained present and callable on production servers. When PowerPeg had operated normally, a cumulative quantity function counted completed shares and stopped additional routing when the parent order was filled. In 2005, Knight moved that counting function to an earlier point in the SMARS code sequence. The firm did not retest PowerPeg afterward to determine whether the dormant function would still operate correctly if activated. The 2012 update was intended to remove the old function and reuse its activation flag for the new retail program. Knight began deploying the new software in stages on July 27th. One technician copied the update to 7 servers but failed to install it on the 8th. No second technician was required to verify the work, and Knight had no written SMARS procedure requiring that review. From outside the system, the 8 machines still appeared to be part of the same functioning cluster. At approximately 8:01 on the morning of August 1st, Knight's internal systems began producing error messages. 97 messages were sent to Knight personnel before the market opened. They referred to SMARS and identified a PowerPeg problem, but Knight had not designed them to function as formal system alerts. The messages created a potential opportunity to identify the failed deployment before trading began. That opportunity disappeared when the opening bell arrived at 9:30. The 7 updated servers handled eligible orders correctly, while the 8th activated the defective PowerPeg code. Chapter 3. 45 minutes? 212 incoming parent orders were processed by the defective function. PowerPeg began sending child orders in rapid succession without accounting for executions that had already occurred. Another part of Knight's platform recognized that the parent orders had been filled, but that information was not communicated to SMARS. The router therefore behaved as though completed customer instructions were still waiting to be filled. Millions of child orders began reaching external trading venues. Every passing minute converted more unintended orders into completed trades that Knight would have to own. Many of the unmatched executions collected inside an internal holding account known as the 33 account. Knight had assigned that account a gross position limit of $2 million. The limit was not connected to an automated mechanism capable of preventing additional orders. Knight's primary monitoring tool showed a large volume of positions accumulating shortly after the market opened. The tool depended entirely on human monitoring and generated no automatic alert about the firm's overall financial exposure. Under the extraordinary volume, the monitoring system also experienced delays and produced inaccurate reports. Because the holding account contained positions from multiple sources, personnel could not quickly determine where the unwanted exposure originated. Knight remained connected to the market while its technology team attempted to diagnose the malfunction inside the live trading environment. During the response, the firm uninstalled the new retail program code from the 7 servers where it had been deployed correctly. That attempted repair worsened the incident by allowing additional incoming orders to activate PowerPeg on those machines as well. By the time the system was contained, Knight had obtained more than 4 million executions. Those executions involved more than 397 million shares across 154 stocks. Knight emerged with approximately $3.5 billion net long and $3.15 billion net short. In 75 affected stocks, Knight represented more than 20% of trading volume and contributed to price moves greater than 5%. In 37 of those stocks, its executions exceeded half of total volume while prices moved by more than 10%. The disruption affected other investors, giving some less favorable prices and others more favorable prices than they otherwise would have received. Stopping the software did not eliminate the trades because the unwanted portfolio already belonged to Knight. Chapter 4. The cost of getting out. Knight had to trade out of the entire accidental portfolio in the open market. Liquidating those positions turned the operational failure into a realized loss exceeding $460 million. That was more than $10 million for every minute the malfunction remained active. The loss severely damaged Knight's capital base and created significant net capital problems. The firm spent the following days pursuing emergency financing to preserve its operations. On August 6th, Knight entered into a $400 million equity financing agreement with a group of outside investors. The investors purchased 2% convertible preferred stock that could convert into approximately 267 million common shares. The rescue supplied the capital Knight needed, but it also created the possibility of substantial dilution for existing shareholders. The capital infusion allowed the company to continue operating after a loss that had threatened its survival as an independent firm. In December 2012, Knight agreed to combine with rival market maker Getco in a transaction valuing Knight at approximately $1.4 billion. The combination closed on July 1, 2013, creating KCG Holdings and ending Knight Capital's existence as an independent public company. Regulators later concluded that the event reflected violations of the Federal Market Access Rule rather than an unavoidable accident. The SEC imposed a $12 million penalty and required an independent review of Knight's development processes, controls, and supervisory procedures. Chapter 5. The failure behind the failure. One technician missed one server, but that human error alone does not explain a loss of $460 million. Obsolete executable code remained on production servers years after Knight had stopped using it. A flag once associated with that code was repurposed without eliminating every path back to the old function. The production deployment proceeded without an independent check confirming that all 8 servers matched. Warnings existed, yet they had not been designed as actionable alerts with clear ownership and a required response. Knight lacked an adequate control comparing what entered SMARS with the volume of orders leaving it. The firm also lacked automatic firm-wide capital thresholds capable of stopping orders when exposure became excessive. Knight had no adequate procedure directing personnel when to disconnect a malfunctioning system from the market. The firm had received an earlier warning in October 2011 when another automated system error caused a loss of nearly $7.5 million. Knight corrected the immediate cause of that earlier event, but did not broadly reassess its defenses against erroneous automated orders. The lesson reaches beyond Knight because contemporary markets depend on interconnected software that can create enforceable transactions almost instantly. Reliable automation assumes that software, hardware, and people will eventually fail, then places independent barriers between an error and the market. Those barriers include controlled releases, independent verification, effective testing, and confirmation that every production machine contains the intended version. They also include real-time financial limits that stop activity without waiting for someone to diagnose the underlying defect. A meaningful emergency response must make it possible to disconnect first and investigate second. Knight Capital survived the morning, but the company that entered the market at 9:30 never fully recovered. The most dangerous machine in finance is one that can remain connected after it has stopped doing what its owners intended.